and I eventually became the social director there.
And this is Virginia, right?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
Richmond, Virginia. And in the social director position, I met a lot of other people in the apartment complex, and one of them was Sue. And she was my age, or close to it, not. And we became pretty close friends. But there were several of us that were in this group, and so we socialized with our husbands as well, and so forth. And I picked up on some energy after several weeks, months of this relationship, that my husband was attracted to her. And then I noticed that she was doing little girl things that men aren't supposed to really know what that means, but it goes to their psyche and makes them perk up.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really suspicious, but I still didn't think that she would betray me.
Yeah.
But she did. And I confronted him, and we had a couple of problems with it, but he kept saying no. And as I left the social director's job because it took up too much of my time, and I went to work at a school for retarded children, or not retarded children, but edit that word out. I don't like that word, but back when I went into it, it was an okay word.
Down syndrome or just special ed?
Special ed,
okay.
And Down syndrome, and so forth and so on. And so during the summertime, they had a camp for these children. And the first time I was there during the summer, they wanted to know if I would run the camp, if I would go out there with my own children and stay for 3 weeks, a week at a time. So I said, well, okay. So I did that. And then at the end of that, we had a trip planned to the Poconos. And we stopped in Niagara Falls. And in Niagara Falls, Jack and I rekindled some of our marriage. It was really good because these other jobs were taking a lot of the energy from me that would be in the marriage, working for the marriage. It took that energy. And so things were getting rough, and this other thing was going off on the side, and I thought, oh, I'm being silly. Well, I came back pregnant with Kathy.
After Niagara Falls. Okay.
Now, fast forward a little bit, and I found out that during the time I was doing the summer camp thing, they were having an affair, probably in our apartment because it was the empty place.
Mm-hmm.
And Sue was furious that I came home pregnant because he was telling her that we weren't having sex. Well, we were having sex all the time. We never didn't have sex that I'm aware of. But that's down the road. Now, we get divorced, and I end up in an early romance. Shouldn't have done that, but that's how that got me in the program. This guy was a recovering alcoholic. Gave me the big book to read. I read it. He wanted me to read it so that I would understand him.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with him to an open meeting, and I loved it. I wanted to go to AA. He said, no, there's a meeting room over here for the Al-Anon for the spouses. So, but I could do that. And so, okay. So I did that, and I did that for a full year. The time goes on. Things where I work, I was supposed to have a promotion. I went to work in the job at a lesser amount of money, but the girl wanted to get pregnant and have a baby, and that's what they were doing, setting up their staff. So I took that job because when I took her job, then I would get her salary. I would get that amount of money, and I could live with the kids, and everything would be just fine. I'd have enough money. And that didn't happen. At the last minute, they did not give me that promotion. They had agreed with the NAACP and a lot of other major corporations in America that they would start hiring qualified black people for these mid-management jobs. And the company I was working for was one that was in on that pact. And so the day I was supposed to take over the job, they came in and said, we're sorry, we can't give you this job. But I was already working. I think I told you this already. I was working in the evenings to get some extra money at the local alcoholism clinic that the state had put together. And that's how I got involved in becoming a counselor in the field
Mm-hmm.
and making that change. And if that tragedy hadn't happened, and it took a year for it to culminate between, well, it doesn't matter. I found out he was with Sue, and I was devastated. I never felt so horrible in all my life to find out that they really were all together, and I wasn't crazy. But during that time, initially when we agreed to get a divorce, and there was some contact, I think I knew for sure that they were having an affair. Her husband came to me and wanted to have an affair with me. And
Sue's husband.
Sue's. And so I had a one-night stand with him out of revenge. And it was, God, I'm so sorry I did that to myself. But anyway, she didn't know about it.
The one-night stand.
So here we are. I'm in this house, overwhelmed, and I can't stand this guy that I'm with anymore. And I tell him, we got to go separate ways. I can't stand it.
Is Kathy here yet, or is she?
Kathy's with me.
Okay.
Kathy and Jill and I moved into this house with him. We moved from the apartments. I had moved. I couldn't afford the apartment.
My point is, Kathy had been born by that time.
Oh yeah, Kathy was older than the two of them. Kathy was the oldest. We have Jill, Kathy, Erica. No, wait.
Clay's first.
Clay's first. Jill, Kathy. Then the other two are born after I married BJ and I was sober for a few years.
Okay, so Erica and Olaf.
Yeah.
You told me that after Niagara Falls you got pregnant, so I'm just...
No, at Niagara Falls.
You got pregnant.
I'm sure of it because we didn't have sex. We had to share a room with the kids up until that point. But he managed to get 2 rooms, and so it was the only time we had sex.
Yeah, okay.
But in our marital life before all of that, we had sex all the time. I mean, normally, I say 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay, and he's telling Sue that there's nothing going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, comes time for me to tell my husband, you have to take the children.
Mm-hmm.
I can't support them anymore.
Yeah.
And so he did. He took the children, but against his better will. And blah, blah, blah. Well, Sue and he have moved in by this point. She's getting a divorce, and her husband is going after her children.
Mm.
Because he found out about the 2 of them. And I was pretty upset about that when I heard about it. And so I called him. I said, look, if you don't back off, I'm going to tell that you and I had that one-night stand. So he backed off.
Mm.
Somehow, as time went by, she heard about that. Nothing was done about it. But then when Kathy wanted to come live with me and Jill wanted to stay with them, they put me through hell with a lawsuit, I guess you could call it. I don't know what to call it.
Jack and Sue did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was horrible. It was just horrible. When I was in Virginia, I went to Virginia and filed for custody because they wouldn't let me see the kids. Every time I went to go see the kids, they weren't home. I went several times. I had moved to Pennsylvania by that point. And I would travel 250 miles to go see my children. And they weren't there. I didn't even know that they had put Clay out of the house and on the streets. He was living on the streets and in neighbors' cars and so forth for almost a year before I knew about it. And by
Why?
that point, we didn't know. He was a problem. He had created problems in the family. He was drinking and using and so forth, and he was a problem.
Okay,
He wasn't
gotcha.
going to school, and they put him out. But they didn't call me. They didn't even ask if he could come stay with me. I mean, it was, at least I don't believe they did. Maybe they did, and I didn't remember it, but I don't think so. Anyway, we went to court. I went to court in Virginia to get my children because I had custody of them. Well, my ex-husband's family was quite well, what's the word in the South? Placed, I think it is. His grandfather was a former governor of the state, and his aunt was a big deal. His father was never much, his own grandfather wasn't much of anything. But anyway, the point is, they got their own lawyer, and they connived to get their own judge. I never saw the judge. Jack and his lawyer went in to see the judge. I was never asked one question. I waited outside in the hallway for my turn, and they just came out and said, "This is what it is. Here it is. You're not going to get these kids. They aren't yours. You're not going to get them." BJ and I were prepared, had gotten a bigger place to live in so that the kids could come and live with me. And it was at that point that I found out Clay wasn't even around. And I was devastated. She'd done it again. She'd managed to manipulate